Welcome back to Totally Pointless.
I am JT.
And I am TJ.
Today we're diving into some Canadian politics.
Buckle up, everybody, because things are about to get really interesting.
And spicy.
Our sources for this deep dive: the always insightful Adrienne Batra and Brian Lilley.
Oh, yeah. They brought the heat this time.
And let me tell you, they did not disappoint.
Oh, yeah. And before we get into the nitty-gritty, we got to give a shout-out to our sponsor.
Yes.
Payment Solutions.
Payment Solutions, helping business owners all across North America
keep more of their hard-earned cash.
So if you're looking to save money every day, Payment Solutions is the way to go.
Absolutely.
Okay, back to Canadian politics. It looks like we might be heading for a federal election.
Much sooner than anyone anticipated.
Way sooner than anyone anticipated. Early 2025 is the new buzzword.
Months ahead of schedule.
Months ahead of the expected October date.
That's right.
And the Conservatives seem to be the ones driving this potential shift.
Yeah, they're taking a pretty unconventional approach here.
Not messing around.
No, they're not aiming to use the Public Accounts Committee to force a non-confidence motion.
What?
They're even eyeing January 30th as a potential date.
Wait, the Public Accounts Committee?
Yeah.
Isn't that usually about, scrutinizing government spending?
Right.
It seems a bit out of left field to use it as a springboard for an election.
It's a bold move for sure. The Conservatives are basically trying to shake things up here and force an election on their own terms.
So where does this leave the other parties?
Well, the NDP finds it a particularly interesting position. They're the kingmakers in this scenario. If the Conservatives want their plan to work, they absolutely need the NDP's support.
Right, because without the NDP, the non-confidence motion wouldn't have enough votes to pass.
Precisely. And Brian Lilley was pretty skeptical about whether Jagmeet Singh, the NDP leader, would actually be on board with this. He's made some pretty strong statements against the Liberals recently, but Lilley isn't convinced that those words will actually translate into action.
It's understandable to be skeptical. I mean, after all, Singh has a history of talking tough, but ultimately siding with the Liberals.
Yeah.
It's like he's got a bark, but no bite.
All bark and no bite.
What I find fascinating is that this whole situation is unfolding against the backdrop of Jagmeet Singh's newly vested pension. That's a cool $2.3 million guaranteed, whether he's in Parliament or not. Makes you wonder if that newfound financial security will influence his decision-making.
That's a really interesting point. Would having that financial safety net make him more or less likely to take a risk, like triggering an early election?
Right. It's a tough one to figure out.
It's hard to say for sure. On one hand, he might feel like he has nothing to lose and is more willing to make a bold move. But on the other hand, maybe he'll want to play it safe and not jeopardize his comfortable retirement.
It's almost like we need a political psychologist to analyze this.
Maybe we should bring one on the show.
Well, while we wait for that analysis, let's not forget about the other big player in this game.
Oh, yeah.
Justin Trudeau, he's not just going to sit back and let the Conservatives dictate the timeline, right?
Exactly. He has his own strategic options to consider.
Like what?
Well, the one that immediately comes to mind is prorogation.
Oh, right. That's like hitting the pause button on Parliament.
Precisely. It's a way for Trudeau to temporarily shut things down and avoid that potential non-confidence vote. It's a controversial move, for sure, but it's been done before.
Didn't Stephen Harper use prorogation back in 2008?
Yeah, during that whole coalition crisis, he prorogued Parliament to prevent a coalition government from forming.
So could Trudeau pull a Harper and use prorogation to sidestep this whole election mess?
It's certainly possible, but we have to remember that the Governor General also plays a role here. She has the authority to refuse a request for prorogation, especially if she believes it's not in the best interests of the country.
Right. She's not just a rubber stamp. She has a duty to ensure that the government operates within the bounds of the Constitution.
Absolutely. So if Trudeau were to prorogue for an extended period, say to buy himself some time for a Liberal leadership race or something, the Governor General might put her foot down.
It seems like she has a pretty important role to play in all of this.
A very important role, and her decision could have major implications for the future of Canadian politics.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive into the potential for an early election.
For sure.
It's a complex situation with a lot of moving parts.
It really is.
And we're just getting started. Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll explore the factors influencing the NDP's decision and the potential consequences of an early election.
It's going to be wild.
Please give you up. It's incredible how much power the NDP holds in this whole scenario.
Oh, yeah.
It's like they're holding all the cards
They are.
in this high-stakes political poker game.
High stakes indeed, and everybody's trying to read their tells.
Exactly. So let's dive deeper into the NDP's potential moves. What are the key factors influencing their decision?
Well, there's obviously the internal dynamics within the party.
Right. We mentioned earlier about the differing opinions between folks like Charlie Angus and Peter Julian.
Right.
One seems content with dragging things out, while the other seems eager for a quick exit from this deal with the Liberals.
Yeah, you got some who want to stick it to the Liberals and others who are like, maybe we should just,
Play it safe.
play it safe.
It's a classic example of the internal struggles that many political parties face.
It sure is.
And it makes predicting their next move even more challenging.
Absolutely. Then there's the whole issue of Jagmeet Singh's pension. It's a significant factor that can't be ignored.
Yeah, the $2.3 million is a game changer. It gives him a level of financial security most politicians can only dream of.
Right.
How does this impact his decision-making? Does it make him more likely to take a risk, knowing he has a comfortable cushion to fall back on?
Or does it make him more risk-averse, hesitant to jeopardize his newfound financial stability?
It's a tough call.
It really is. On one hand, you could argue that he might feel emboldened, more willing to stand up to the Liberals and trigger an election, knowing he's financially secure.
But on the other hand, maybe that security makes him more cautious.
He might be thinking, why rock the boat when I've got this sweet deal,
Right.
I can just ride this out and enjoy my retirement.
It's a classic dilemma, security versus ambition.
Absolutely.
And only time will tell which way Singh will lean.
We'll see what happens.
Another key factor to consider is the public mood.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Canadians are growing increasingly frustrated with the current political climate. The cost of living is soaring. Housing is out of reach for many.
Right.
And there's a general sense of unease about the future.
People are feeling it.
So how does this public sentiment play into the NDP's decision?
Well, they have to weigh the potential benefits of siding with the Conservatives and triggering an election against the risks of alienating voters who might see it as an opportunistic power grab.
They don't want to be seen as the bad guys.
Right. They don't want to appear like they're just following the Conservatives' lead. They need to maintain their own identity and principles.
Exactly. They have to walk a fine line between responding to the public's desire for change and appearing too eager to seize power.
It's a delicate balancing act.
It is a delicate balancing act for sure, and then there's the potential consequences of an early election to consider.
Oh, yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, for starters, an early election could further polarize an already divided electorate.
You're right, emotions are running high, and a snap election could just exacerbate those tensions.
Exactly. And it could also lead to a less stable government, especially if no party wins a clear majority.
Yeah, that's a valid concern.
Yeah.
We've seen minority governments struggle to pass legislation and maintain stability in the past.
And let's be real, in a time of economic uncertainty and global instability,
The last thing Canada needs.
the last thing Canada needs is a weak and ineffective government.
So the NDP has a lot to weigh. Internal party dynamics, Singh's personal circumstances, the public mood, and the potential consequences of an early election.
So many factors.
It's a complex web of factors, and their decision will have ripple effects across the Canadian political landscape.
Big time.
And we, the eager observers, will be watching closely to see how it all unfolds. We've talked a lot about the NDP and their pivotal role in this potential early election, but let's not forget about the other elephant in the room, Justin Trudeau and the Liberals.
Right. They're not just going to sit back and watch this all unfold passively. They'll have their own moves to make.
Exactly. So what are the Liberals' options here? What can they do to navigate this tricky situation?
Well, as you mentioned earlier, prorogation is a possibility.
That pause button on Parliament?
Exactly. It's a way for Trudeau to temporarily shut things down and buy himself some time.
But wouldn't that look pretty bad? I mean, wouldn't it seem like he's running scared, avoiding an election he knows he might lose?
Oh, it definitely wouldn't be a good look. It would feed into that narrative that he's out of touch with the public and more concerned with holding on to power than addressing the real issues facing Canadians.
And remember, the Governor General would have to approve any request for prorogation.
Right, and as we discussed earlier, she's not likely to grant it if she feels it's not in the best interests of the country.
So prorogation is a risky move, but it's still on the table.
It is another option for the Liberals, is to just try and weather the storm, wait it out, and see if the Conservatives' plan backfires.
What do you mean by backfires?
Well, the Conservative strategy is a gamble. They're betting that forcing an early election will catch the Liberals off guard and give them an advantage.
But what if it doesn't work out that way? What if the public sees it as just a cynical political maneuver?
Exactly. It could backfire and actually hurt the Conservatives in the polls.
So the Liberals could decide to just sit tight, let the Conservatives play their hand, and hope that the public reacts negatively.
It's a passive approach, but it might be the safest option in this unpredictable political climate.
It's fascinating to see all these different strategies and scenarios playing out. It's like a high-stakes chess match with each player trying to anticipate their opponent's next move.
Absolutely. And the stakes are high. The outcome of this political maneuvering will have a significant impact on the lives of everyday Canadians.
Absolutely.
Huh.
So where does this leave us? What's the bottom line for our listener?
Well, the bottom line is that Canadian politics is in a state of flux right now.
We're on the precipice of a potential early election, but it's still unclear whether it will actually happen.
The NDP holds a lot of power in this situation,
Okay.
and their decision will have a ripple effect across the political landscape.
The Liberals are facing a tough choice. Do they try to control the narrative, or do they just ride out the storm?
And the Conservatives are taking a gamble, hoping that their aggressive strategy will pay off.
It's a fascinating time to be following Canadian politics, and one thing is for sure, it's going to be a bumpy ride.
So buckle up, everybody, and stay tuned, because the next few months are going to be anything but boring.
Thanks for joining us on Totally Pointless. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.